going to go back to Prager University. In fact, this is not just any Prager University instructor. We're going to be we're going to be watching here. We're going straight to the top. This is the man himself. This is Dennis Prager, and these are the recent thoughts of Dennis Prager. I think he got COVID and was maybe out of commission, but like I think this was from like maybe a month ago. He did this, and I just wanted to share his wisdom with everybody.
So I am going to present a proposition to you today that, as Megan said prior to this, when I told her what I'd like to open up, speaking about, said that's going to trigger any number of people. It's not meant to at all, but it will. Why it will is probably something I'll also address. So here's the proposition, but first I have to.
All right, are you ready for the proposition?
That we have to agree on, otherwise the proposition won't make any sense. America is less free today than a few years ago, and less free than at any time in its history. Now, obviously, it was less free for some of its citizens, namely Black citizens, for quite some time because of slavery. But
minor detail.
This has been the freest country in the history of the world, which is why the French gave America the Statue of Liberty. They didn't keep it for themselves. They didn't give it to any European country. Right. They gave it to the United States.
I'm with you so far.
When
okay. Sorry. We have to stop.
Freedom,
we have to stop there.
They have often waved the American.
Okay. Just to review, America is the freedomiest country of all time. We have always had the most amount of freedom, granted, except for the whole thing where there was this whole chunk of the population that was literally enslaved from birth to death. But other than that, we had the most freedom. And if you just want evidence for this, look, the French, they gave us the Statue of Liberty. They didn't keep it for themselves.
Imagine the deliberation where they're like, I don't want to even do my French accent, but like, should we give them the statue? No, let's not give it to them. Let's keep it for ourselves because we're more free. That's
exactly. They considered all that. They'd already made the statue. They'd already decided it was the Statue of Liberty, and they were going through a list of all the different countries in the world they could give it to. And it's like, okay, should we give it? Should we give it to Prussia? Should we give it to Great Britain?
Let me just bust out my my Fraser list of most economically free countries, right? And
that's what they're going by, was the Fraser list when they decided who to give it to. Yes, and yes, exactly. The Silver, the French hive mind, entirely without exception, agreed to make and give the statue. Also, like, okay, if we are going to treat France as a hive mind, like, you know what's even more impressive than having a freedom statue? Like the Statue of Liberty, like, is actually putting the word liberté, liberty, on the door of every single government building in the entire country, which is what the French did shortly after that. So they didn't keep the statue for themselves, but after they got rid of the king, they did put liberty, equality, fraternity, like on the doors of every single public building, which seems like I don't know. I mean, like it seems like at that point maybe they were the most freedomy country in the world.
Well, conservatives are famous for considering France the arbiter of freedom, which is why we call French fries freedom fries, right? That's why conservatives decided that they had to. Which is, I just realized, like why? Yeah, it's extra strange that this conservative site is calling France the arbiter of freedom when we literally replaced the word French with freedom because of. But maybe I don't know. Maybe it's not a contradiction like it seems.
Yeah, no, that is amazing though, right? Because like, yes, the French get to decide who has who's the freest. They that like, in fact, at that point, the like King Louis got to decide who's the freest. and he's the freedom authority. So, all right. I promise we're not going to stop quite as quickly as this next time. I'm going to do my best at least, but I just had to say something about the they didn't keep the statue for themselves argument.
Yeah, and real quick, I do have to say, I think based on your performance versus his, I'd rather get the booster than get COVID, because he's not. He seems a little worse for wear. Not that I've watched too much pre-COVID, Dennis. Anyway,
American flag. Most recently in Hong Kong, where they were demonstrating against the subversion of liberty in that little place called Hong Kong by the Chinese Communist government. They waved American flags. This is the sweet land of liberty, as the lyrics go from one of our major songs. America the Beautiful, I believe it is. Not God Bless America. It's from Sweet Land of Liberty of the I Sing. Yeah.
Yeah, maybe he had already got COVID at this point.
Yeah, it's America the Beautiful, right? Sweet Land of Liberty. Let's put it this way. The most important freedom of all is freedom of speech. And that freedom has been attacked for the first time in American history. That was the one thing Americans of all political persuasion.
Like, whatever he's going to say here about free speech and look, I don't like to do the weird sort of, whataboutism game that people do when free speech stuff comes up. It's like, oh, you're complaining about this free speech thing, but what about this other free speech thing? It's like, I don't know, lots of things can be bad, right? So maybe some of the stuff he's going to bring up, I might even agree, are bad from a free speech perspective. We'll see. But for the first time in American history, I don't think there should be a university named after this guy.
Yeah. I'm not sure about the history there.
I mean, like, okay. I mean, just off the top of my head, there was the Alien and Sedition Act, which was really early on, after the beginning of the United States, that was a pretty significant attack on free speech, to get people who aliens, immigrants who were seen as being politically seditious to be cracked down on. There's
what do you think he would say about McCarthyism?
Yeah, that seems like a big one, right? Like the McCarthy period, when we're literally dragging people in front of Congress to demand whether demand to know whether they were involved with, or at least refused to denounce, an unpopular political party. And also, because I'm guessing that whatever he's about to bring up about free speech is going to be mostly stuff that private entities have done, because most of the stuff right-wingers talk about with free speech is stuff that private entities have done, which, don't get me wrong, does not mean that that's not a problem. I mean, I'm a socialist. I absolutely think that that private corporations can restrict our freedom, but if private stuff counts, then the Hollywood blacklist should count, right? This is this idea that there's no free speech is under attack for the first time in American history. In between the Alien Sedition Act and McCarthy, we also had like the original, we had the World War I stuff we were talking about, that when our favorite president Woodrow Wilson was cracking down on people like Debs for opposing the war. There's actually, I guess we don't have it right now, which is fine, but there's a nice Christopher Hitchens clip that we're looking at using at some point in the episode, where he's explaining the origin of that metaphor about shouting fire in a crowded theater, and the Supreme Court case where the majority opinion trotted that out, right, was in this, Wilson era, and then going into the 20s, the original Red Scare, where, although God, we can look at the Teddy Roosevelt stuff before that, but the context was World War I. It was like a Jewish socialist group that was passing out anti-conscription literature, when they opposed the draft for World War I, and they were arrested. And of course, they tried to argue their free speech rights have been violated. The Supreme Court said, well, encouraging people to resist the draft is like shouting fire in a crowded theater. Free speech doesn't go that far. So,
damn, I'm gonna stop using that metaphor, maybe.
Yeah. I mean, like that's. Jesus, we could. Could talk about Haymarket Square, the people, like the anarchist workers who were, executed after like a super sketchy trial, basically because they were there, at a protest where somebody threw a bomb and nobody really knows who it was. Seems to me that free speech has been attacked like a whole bunch of times pretty much throughout American history, and a lot of those attacks are actually probably, I'm going to say, bigger deals than whatever he's about to say, but we'll see.
Yeah, we'll see. And I just quickly, I laughed out loud, not at your description of McCarthyism, but at Jay Hutch saying I was pretty close to being a free speech absolutist until I heard him start singing a few minutes ago. That was an abomination. Yeah. So that's why I was laughing in the middle of your serious discussion about McCarthyism. Let's go back to the text.
Asians agreed with. As I heard when I grew up, I may not agree with what you say, but I will fight to the death for your right to say it. That was actually a phrase that people used on both sides of the political spectrum. However, that is not the case today. Wherever the left, as opposed to liberals, in the past we had liberals generally and conservatives. We didn't have many leftists. Liberals are not leftists. Liberals are left of center, but they're not leftists.
This is helpful. He's doing the work right now.
Leftists do not support freedom of speech. Nowhere in the history of the world have they, or in the history of the left since Karl Marx. They have never supported it. They have always suppressed it. The university is a perfect example. Cancel culture is what it's called in large measure.
Karl Marx literally wrote about the importance of press freedom. So that's one thing. Like we were talking about in the main show, the free speech movement at Berkeley was like one of the things that like really jump-started the new left in leading into the Vietnam era. The fight against McCarthyism was widely seen by leftists, as a free speech thing. The Wobblies, right? The industrial workers of the world, really radical, leftist union at the beginning of the 20th century. They would do what they call free speech fights, where they would basically have a bunch of people go into the center of town to like try, passing out wobbly literature and stuff, knowing the sheriff was going to arrest them until they like overflowed the jails, doing that to take a stand for free speech. So no. Like, it is not even remotely true that leftists have never, throughout history, supported free speech. In fact, I would argue that in many places, leftists have actually been much better than liberals at advocacy for free speech and freedom of the press and all of that stuff. I mean, going back to that fire in a crowded theater example, or going forward to the different attitudes that people have about like Julian Assange and WikiLeaks, for example. Like I think I'm just gonna say like this seems like not true. You have been watching free public content from Give Them an Argument. To access every single episode of the show, the main show on Monday nights, all of the streams, all of the debate breakdowns, all of the patron exclusive post games on Monday nights, all of the patron exclusive bonus episodes every week, and much, much more, go to patreon.com/Ben Burgis. I cannot resist ending this with, don't be foolish.